context here. So for you guys that are joining, welcome. We just have some technical difficulties. We want to make sure we can fix it before we get started. But I'm excited about this. So look, Thomas and I have been teaching students to invest in Canada in the U.S. Canadian students to invest in the U.S. since 2021. We're talking about hundreds of students that have been successfully investing in the U.S. Thomas and I have built a amazing partnership. So he's going to talk about all the amazing things and the reasons why you should be looking at the U.S. I think differently. I think you should look at Canada and the US. So basically, expand your geographical search. You're looking at a market that's 10 times the size, and that's exciting. And so we're going to also offer you. So we're going to come back and do an intensive training because obviously we're not going to be able to solve all the world's problems today. And hopefully, you get enough here to get a little bit more information so you get a good insight on what you want to do and how you want to do it. And then we're gonna come back. I think it's in at the end of November with a virtual event. And so I'll come back and talk about that. And having said that, let's turn it over to Tomas. Tomas, take it over.
Thank you, Alfonso. Again, welcome everybody all across Canada. It's great to be here. As Alfonso mentioned, I mean, we're here, for an hour and a half, 2 hours tonight. And I'll be sharing a lot of information, but again, how much can I do in such a short period of time? So we will be discussing a 3-day event coming up in late November. But saying that, again, thank you for your patience. So let's get right into it, as you guys have been very patient until now. So hopefully you guys can see my screen. If there's any issues, let me know. Drop any questions you have in the meantime in the chat because we're gonna try to leave some Q&A for the end of the presentation. All right. So again, welcome everybody. My name is Thomas Laurini. I'm the CEO and founder of Venture Co Capital. That's my private investment firm. I'm based here in Southern California, but originally from Canada. So I'm a dual citizen, born and raised in Toronto, and moved out here about 11 years ago. I've been in business for over 20 years, in real estate specifically, 15 years. Licensed realtor down here, and I've been doing coaching and speaking over the last 5 years. And me personally, I do invest in both Canada and US. All right. I am a best-selling author. This is actually a work of passion of mine that I launched a book recently called Borderless Wealth, and it's really geared towards Canadians investing and helping them understand, what they need to know about investing in the U.S. This is my lovely family, my wife Julia, my kids. This is my why. This is what I do, why I do what I do. And God's blessed us in so many ways, incredible ways. So truly blessed. And again, just want to give God the glory for everything. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. I wouldn't be married, and just how everything ended up where I'm at, and how. And I'm so grateful for that. You can follow me on Real Thomas Laurie on IG, where I share other information. As I mentioned, Venture Go Capital is my private investment firm. And yeah, coaching and training. Been doing this for a number of years now. Hundreds of people speaking on stage all across Canada and the US. And we've got, people in our group in both countries. But let's get right into it. Enough talking about myself. Cross borders, crossing borders, how Canadians are winning US real estate in 2025. So I'm going to go through a lot of information, make note, guys. And if you've got questions, leave them in the chat. This is the 3-day event coming up. We'll talk about this a little bit later tonight, but this is the 3-day virtual boot camp. So you may want to mark these dates, November 25th to 27th. This is going to be 3 complete days from the privacy of your home that will be going in much more in-depth on the training and stuff we're talking about tonight. Okay, number 1, it's happening with or without you. The reality is Canadians are already investing in the US. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. And actually, Canadians are the number 1 foreign investors in the US. All right, guys. So when we talk about Canadians investing in the US, it's not like some far off idea or something that not too many people do. You probably know people already have properties in the US, right? I mean, I know plenty of people have got a second home in Florida. They've got properties, in different parts of the country. But again, Canadians are number one foreign investors in the US. And even outside of all the news you've been hearing over the past year, the political climate, tensions between, the prime minister and the president, still, I mean, yes, maybe it's slowed down considerably over the last year, but still, Canadians have a huge investment footprint across the US. As Alfonso mentioned, the population is huge. Although Canada looks massive in size, the population is not that big. So, in comparison, just the state of California has more people than all of Canada. All right. So, again, just to put things in perspective, because that's something really important as you're going to find out more and more from tonight's presentation. Population uh, creates opportunities. But I really want to own in on a couple of really specific things for you to understand, especially as a Canadian. You may or may not know. Number one is affordability. So Chapman University did an in-depth study all across cities all across the world. This was not specific to Canada or the US. And what they discovered is the most affordable major cities in the world, 9 out of 10 are here in the US. Interesting enough, number five, you can see is Edmonton, Alberta. So, I mean, this should raise your awareness if you didn't know. You may have thought other parts of the world, people are working and living for much cheaper, but that's not the reality. When they've done this study, they took in consideration, the wages, the cost of a home, and just the expenditures between mortgages, that sort of thing. And they discovered, again, 9 out of the most affordable cities in the world are in the US. Check this slide out. Oh, there's a few more people in the waiting room. Let me invite them in. So you may or may not realize there are over 10 US states where the median home price is less than $200,000. That is huge. We're not talking about a city. We're talking about an entire US state. Places like Iowa, Ohio, Nebraska, Kansas, the median home price. So again, from an affordability standpoint, this doesn't exist in Canada. You don't have entire provinces at this type of price point. All right. So really important. And when you compare that to the amount of income they earn, you can see the income to mortgage ratio is very affordable and completely different than what you're seeing in Canada. So the next slide even makes it even more clear. All right. Take a look at this map of the US. These blue states, these states highlighted in blue, these are the states with housing costs under 15% of their estimated monthly income. 15%. You're talking about half the country where the the housing cost is less than 15%. And then this greenish yellow, those are ones where the housing cost is between 15 and 29% of their monthly income. So you can see there, but again, affordability is drastically different than what you're experiencing in Canada. And why is that important? I mean, if the price of homes are significantly lower, I mean, it's easier to acquire. And as an investor, I want to know that. So you can see here, the red states, you're really dialed into California and Hawaii, where housing cost is over 30%. So again, a much different climate. And you can see on this chart, it does a complete comparison of affordability across different countries in the world. And you can see clearly the difference between the US and Canada. The US is pretty much one of the most, if not, if you take Saudi Arabia out of the equation, the US is the most affordable country. And again, you can see here the I highlighted those two markers. Price to income ratio around 4, and then you have the mortgage as a percentage of income around 29%. But I clearly share with you, you've got plenty of states where you're less than 15%. All right. And if you compare that to Canada, the price to income ratio, and this chart's probably about a year and a half old. You can see here 7.2 price to income ratio, meaning that it's going to take 7 times your income to equal the price of a home. And you can see here you're at about 50%. So a significant difference between Canada and US. 50% is basically the mortgage cost as a percentage of income. So half of your income is going towards your mortgages, right? And if you factor in taxes, what are you really left with in Canada in comparison? All right. Again, average price, a typical home in Canada is hovering around $700,000, and in the U.S., we've reached all-time highs recently, just over $400,000. So that gap is starting to, shrink. We've seen a definitely a shift in the Canadian market over the last few years. Prices of homes in Canada have come down. I would say in many major places between 50 and 20% even. I know I've got properties in Ontario, and I've kind of tuned in to certain places out there where the prices of properties have come down. But at one point, the average price of Canada was hovering around $800,000. And at US, we were around 325. But what we've seen that gap closing over the last number of years. So again, why consider investing in the US? Besides the affordability factor is reduced exposure to the Canadian market. Again, I kind of alluded to that, but look at this, affordability is really getting out of whack. I mean, that slide previously mentioned hovering around 50%. Well, this is another data point from the Bank of America, and you can see here that affordability is even worse. I mean, where you've got almost 60% of people's income going towards the housing cost. So it's really difficult in Canada when you compare it. And I'm sure, my parents live in Ontario, so I speak to them regularly. And they're obviously, they feel the effect, and again, I've owned property there, so I get it. But this is something you may or may not realize when you compare it to the US. The annual home price changes. So, what's the forecast? Again, we're talking about considering diversifying from the Canadian marketplace, right? And I want to stop here for a second. I'm not saying do not invest in Canada, right? So, don't get me wrong. That's not the gist of this presentation. But the idea is diversifying, right? So, if you are investing in Canada, you own properties in Canada, the consideration is looking at the US as another market, all right? But you can see here another data point where forecast, of property values coming down an additional 10%. So, and I'm sure if you're in Canada, I'm sure you've seen around, where you live or in other cities, the prices of properties have come down, softened. Again, in Canada, much more sensitive to the mortgage rates compared to the US. You may or may not realize that in the US, the average homeowner locks in their mortgage rate for 30 years. So as the rates have gone up considerably over the last few years, the majority of mortgage holders in the US weren't affected because they've locked in those 3% rates for the next 20 years, right? Versus in Canada, most of us are renewing every 4 to 5 years. So you may have had like a 2% mortgage, back in 2022, and now you go back to renew it now, and you're like, wait a minute, rates are like at 4, 5, 6%. So that's a significant difference. Your payment it goes up drastically, right? But I'm sure, these are headlines you've seen of kind of like where the prices of homes are trending and what the economists are saying, and just in general. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom, but I mean, this was an article I pulled where if they compared provinces to states, and it says if Ontario were a US state, it'd actually be the fifth poorest state, unfortunately. And if Quebec was a US state, it'd be the second poorest US state. So, you know, it's just unfortunate how things have played out in Canada over the last, 7, 8, 9 years. Obviously, there's been a regime change. Trudeau's no longer there. But you can see some of these headlines talking about the gap between Canadian and American economies has now reached its widest point in nearly a century. All right. Um, the US is on track to produce nearly 50% more per person than Canada will. That's pretty interesting and pretty scary at the same time. This is an older slide from last year where, the prices of US homes had hit record high, but it continues to do in general very well. If you can't see at the bottom, this is 419,000, the median price of a U.S. home. But that number is probably a little higher today. Of course, this is something to consider, the exchange rate and which way it's trending. All right. But this is an interesting slide. Guys, I've got a lot of slides, so I'm gonna go through them. But again, take a look at this slide. The lowest tax jurisdiction in Canada is Alberta, but it's still higher than the highest tax jurisdiction in the US, which is California. So that's something. I mean, again, we could talk about tax alone for an hour. There's different types of tax, obviously, but just from an income standpoint, income tax. I mean, the highest tax in the US being California is still lower than the lowest in Canada. All right. So where do you think talent's going to go? You may already know people, a doctor or a business person who's basically moved their business south of the border. And why is that? Right. So something for you all to consider. All right, let's kind of continue on to the next really important thing as an investor. All right, we're talking real estate investors, landlord-friendly markets. So, if anyone here has a rental property in Ontario, raise your hand. If you own a rental property in Ontario long enough, you would have to face the LTB. All right, and if you've gone through the LTB, it's a disaster. All right. I mean, I've had situations not able to get a tenant out of a property for upwards of a year. And you go to court, you wait and wait, and then all of a sudden, the the judge rules in favor of the tenant, giving them more time. You missed a document that wasn't filed correctly. You left the postal code off of the address on the notice, and the case is thrown out, and you got to start the whole process again. And simultaneously, you're not collecting any rent. The unit's getting damaged, so your recourse is very limited. All right. So this chart here basically, it shows the increase of non-paying rent cases and saying the average, all right, the average rent owed to a landlord for non-payment is basically $16,000. Like, how sad is that? This is the average. So that means you got cases 20, 30, 40, $50,000. That, and I know personally, plenty of investors who've faced that pain and gone through that. So as an investor, there's options. And that's why we're here today. And that's why you're here, to explore other options, and the US being one of them. And this next slide is one of my most, probably one of my most exciting and favorite slides, because this maps out the states which are landlord-friendly states. And as an investor, I want to invest in landlord-friendly states predominantly. And I'm going to go into the why very soon. But you can see this. It's not every state. You've got this teal, blue color state. Those are all renter-friendly states. So I'm based in California, definitely a tenant-friendly state, right? But you have other ones. You can see the Southeast, the Midwest, all in red, right? And then you got places like Arkansas in dark red. Interesting enough, some of you may not realize it's a criminal offense not to pay your rent in Arkansas, where people can actually go to jail. So think of that. How stark difference between Arkansas and Ontario. All right. So again, really important for you as an investor to realize that. And then this next slide, again, kind of simultaneously talking about the best landlord-friendly states. Very similar. You can kind of see where they're hovering in the Midwest and the Southeast predominantly. All right. You got Texas, Florida tend to always come up high in the list. But if you've got places like Georgia and North Carolina and so forth. All right. So again, this is just to kind of whet your palate, guys. Start getting your gears, getting familiar, understanding. Maybe there's some places you've heard about, maybe you visited, but it's really important as an investor that you really consider markets which are landlord friendly. And why is that? Well, these are probably the most important factors to consider. All right. Number one, no rent control. That is huge. You can set the rent in landlord-friendly markets, predominantly, you can set the rent to whatever you want. So when I'm an investor acquiring a property in a landlord-friendly state, right? And you'll see later on some examples of my properties or other people I know in Ohio, for instance, which is a landlord-friendly state. I set the rent, right? Let me go back to that. I set the rent. So market rent could be $1,000 a month for a two bedroom. I can list it for 900. I can list it for 1,500. I had that control. And not only that, let's say you acquire property that has a tenant already in place paying $600 when market rent is $1,000. So for those of us in Ontario or investors in Ontario, you're stuck, right? You can only increase the rent based on the posted, LTB um, amount, which in most cases between 1 to 3% annually, which doesn't even, factor in or keep up with inflation. But I'm acquiring properties in landlord-friendly states where if they're paying $600 and either if they're month to month or their leases are coming up for renewal, we don't have to keep them in there. Or we give notice saying, listen, you're paying substantially below market. We're the new owners. We're looking to come in, improve the property. So we want to spend money on improving the units. But at the same time, the rents will increase substantially, right? More in line with market. So now the tenant themselves can either stay or leave. So again, having that kind of power, having that kind of control, it really reduces your risk factor as an investor dramatically. All right. I get investors or students of mine, in Ontario. Oh, Thomas, take a look at this Templex. Look at the rents are so low. But if we increased it to market, this would be a great deal. That but is really huge and really risky because places like Ontario, where you can't just raise rent, how long will it take? It may take years, if ever, to get it to market rent. Tenants these days, they know what's up. They know what the going rate is. So if they're paying substantially lower than market rent, they're never going to move. And that's what ends up happening. People live, you know, these um, these tenants live, I mean, years, decades in a unit paying peanuts when the market is substantially higher. So number one, no rent control is huge. Fast eviction process. Again, I mentioned to you earlier, the process in places like Ontario, upwards to a year or longer to evict a tenant. In landlord-friendly states, for the most part, the eviction process is much, much quicker. I'll give you an example. We went through an eviction process for non-paying tenant in our Ohio property recently. They don't pay for a couple of months. You give them a chance, they still don't pay. You send it to a lawyer, they submit the paperwork, and we get a court date set up in a couple of weeks. And in a couple of weeks, at the court date, it's happened where, I mean, we're pretty much batting 100, where either tenant doesn't show up or they don't have much ground to stand on why they haven't paid rent. So the judge votes in our favor, and we end up winning. And then a couple weeks later, we can evict the tenant. So that process may take a month, 4, 5, 6 weeks. That's been the longest in my experience in the market I invest in. And that's huge. If I know I have that control, if someone stops paying, they're damaging the unit, they're breaking the law, we can quickly evict them. Wouldn't you want that for just the peace of mind, the predictability? That's huge. Number three, no lease continuation. So unlike places which are very tenant friendly, that once the lease expires, you can't kick them out. In landlord friendly markets, for the most part, if their lease is over or coming up, you don't have to renew it. So thank you very much. You've been a great tenant, but we're not going to renew your lease. You're going to have to move out, once your lease is over, which could be next month or depending on how long you give a notice, maybe 60 days. So again, that gives you the predictability when you acquire an asset. You can say, okay, we're going to plan this year to turn over so many units. And you have that control to not renew people's leases, to evict them quickly. So all those factors, when you stack them up against a market like Ontario or places which are heavily tenant friendly, it's a game changer. All right. Again, this is for many of you who may not even realize that this exists, especially if you're a landlord in Ontario. I mean, I've been I mean, I've gone through many times. I still own, again, properties in Ontario, and I pray daily I don't get, any bad tenants because it could be a little nightmare. There's several other notes here from 4, 5, and 6, 7. I'm not going to go into them specifically tonight, but again, those are all benefits to you as a landlord. All right. Um, what rent control can look like. So I took a couple of screenshots from some investors who were in a group chat, and they were talking about some tenants that they had. And I was just talking about some of these professional tenants. They're not going to move unless you pay $25,000. All right, cash for keys, that sort of thing. I mean, back in the day, you can pay a tenant a couple $1,000s and they're willing to move. That's no longer the case, especially places like Ontario. They basically hijack you. They stop paying and they're like, all right, pay me, 25, $30,000 to leave. Or this other one on the right side is where the tenant could stay. So it's an environment or a situation where the tenant basically stopped paying rent, demanding cash for keys, and the landlord says, I can't pay it. And then it went for so long that the landlord had to declare bankruptcy. And interesting enough, the tenant didn't have to leave. So think about that. You own the property, you're making the mortgage payments, the tenant stops paying rent, you still have to make your mortgage payments. How long can you go with no income coming in? 6 months, 8 months, a year? And that's the scary part. So and there's been stories where it goes on for several years and the landlord's done. I got no more money to pay. So he basically has to give the property up or go bankrupt. And then, the tenant still lives in the property. That go through the foreclosure process, power sale, and then it's up to the new owner, to absorb that tenant and deal with them. So this is totally unfair. And it could be a real nightmare for certain people. And you just don't know. It's like almost gambling in a market like that, where you put in a tenant, one day they're good. And I've had that. I've had a tenant for 5 years in Ontario, great tenant. All of a sudden something happened. They got injured at work, they lost a job, stopped paying. And then the problems begin. All right. And another friend, was mentioning on a post, notice how the rent control markets have the highest rent. Yeah, and that's usually the case. When the government steps in, it usually makes things worse. So most rent control markets, like here in Los Angeles or Toronto, New York, that's usually where the rent has skyrocketed. You compare that to places like I invest in, way lower, like night and day lower, 10, 15 times lower. All right. So landlord-friendly markets increase your control and predictability. So as an investor, you want to know this. I'm going to give you a couple of case studies. So my very first U.S. deal. So we had moved to the U.S. and I started looking at, different markets to invest in. And this little house came, up for sale. It was a turnkey property, completely renovated, and I acquired it. And these are the numbers. I bought it for $80,000. A 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, backyard, detached. Bought it for $80,000. Rent at that time, this is going back to about 2017-ish, was $1,000 a month. Expenses, mortgage payment. Again, it was turnkey. The tenant paid for all the utilities, really tax and insurance were my main expenses. I did have a property manager in place as well, and they took about 10%. So I was netting about close to $200 a month. And interesting enough, the seller provided a VTB, 6% for 30 years. So I didn't even use a bank for this. This was literally turnkey. I came up with $30,000. They carried the balance. And from day one, I was netting $200 a month. But yeah, $80,000. There's not too many Canadian markets, not too many Canadian cities. I think you can acquire, a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom detached house for $80,000 that rents for $1,000 a month. All right. So again, just a sample for you to understand what's available, across that border. And again, the US truly is the land of opportunities. Now living here for over 10 years and comparing to Canada, there are just so many different opportunities, things that most Canadians haven't even heard of. All right. I mean, yes, traditional rental strategies like single families or multi units. Yes. You may have heard of arbitrage. You may or may not have heard of co living strategies. You may not have heard of Subject 2, astro flipping, novation. Again, it's endless. You know, again, the longer I'm here, the more investors I connect with and the different markets, the things that come up. I mean, it's huge and it's substantially different compared to the US, to Canada. Co-living, I mean, this was a game changer when I looked at this about 3.5 years ago. Did an event, brought some of our members down to Tampa. We walked into these homes that were converted. 4 bedroom, 3 bathroom home was converted to 7 bedrooms. They were renting out bedrooms by the week. So a typical 4 bedroom home in that market was renting for $1,600 a month. Utilizing this strategy, they're almost 4 times the amount of rent. So that is a strategy. Uh, some of my students have really focused on this one strategy and doing very well. All right. But you need to know the market. You need to know how to navigate that, the right insurance companies, mortgage companies, and so forth. All right. Turnkey, I mentioned that earlier. So this is a brand new home. This is a brand new turnkey. The one I acquired wasn't brand new. But again, these are all stuff that is available to you as a Canadian. Multi-units, I kind of joke around. I challenge Canadians, go on realtor.ca, type in multi-unit. And you know, this was a little bit harder a few years ago. You type in multi-unit, you know, 15 unit, 20 unit building, and then around you, nothing will come up. But you go on to Zillow or Crexi or some of these US um, real estate websites and you type in multi-units, thousands of opportunities come up. Again, just from the population is huge, 10 times the size, but even from just the opportunities, the asset class, the availability of the properties is just they're everywhere. Rental arbitrage, self-storage. I mean, again, it's endless, guys. All right. So again, the whole premise of tonight's session is to whet your palate, to give you an idea. Okay, you know, like some light bulbs should be going up. You guys should really, you know, start thinking, okay, there is a difference between Canada and US. All right. The next segment, I want to get into top markets because this is probably one of the most asked question. Thomas, where do I invest? And that's a great question because you got 50 states. Each state is like literally a country in its own. So it's really important that you kind of dial in and pick a market. But how do you pick it? And that's the next segment of my presentation. I want to get into how to choose a location. All right. And what I created are KPIs. So if you're making notes, really pay attention to this slide and the next slide. Basically, KPIs, I mean, you know, coming back from my mechanical engineering background, this was something that, you know, depending on the project we were working on, identifying, you know, certain metrics to really understand if the project or the the project or the asset is performing where you want it to perform. So in this case, if we're looking at markets, well, you need to come up with some key performance indicators, indicators that help you to identify if this market is good or not good. And these are the 7 different KPIs you should make note. Number one is rising property prices. So if the prices of homes and assets in that particular market are going up, something is good going on there, right? I mean, this is pretty standard or straightforward. But what you want to do is kind of have an environment where more of these KPIs are basically checked. So you don't just want to invest in, you know, into a market, the property prices are going up and that's it. You want to kind of find a market where the prices are going up, but also it's a landlord friendly market, right? So you got to start stacking things more and more in your favor. You want to look at property taxes because property taxes is huge. You can't really control property taxes. And market to market, state to state, city to city, the property taxes can be significantly different, right? We're talking from like less than 1% to like 4%. I mean, the range is huge across the US. So that's something you really want to understand a particular market, what the property tax is. How often do they reassess? Is it reassessed upon a sale? Is it reassessed every few years? You really want to find out about the particular market and compare them. All right. Population growth. So not only are property prices going up, but population growth. People are moving there, right? So more people moving to a market must be a reason people are moving there. Most likely they're moving there because what? Maybe it's more affordable, maybe because there's more jobs, maybe because of the weather, but anywhere people are moving to, that creates, more demand. With more demand, you as a landlord have more tenants and you could potentially raise the price. All right, supply and demand. So population growth is another huge KPI to consider. Affordability. I don't have to get into that because I talked about it earlier exhaustively, but affordability is huge KPI to factor in. So you want to compare market to market. What's the affordability here? The price point, the average income in comparison to another market. Job growth, obviously, is a big one. How are the jobs? Who are the biggest employers in a particular market? Um, is the job growth going up? Is it flat, or is it actually going down? Right, and you'll get that across the country. So you really want to find out what's going on and talking to local municipalities on development and so forth. So that's a huge thing. Job market. It's going to draw more people there, obviously. And finally, rising rents, right? Again, everything is kind of interconnected, but a market where the rents are going up, something's going on, right? Demand is exceeding. Um, so the prices are going to be going up. So as an investor, you may want to really own in on those particular particular markets. All right. So those are the KPIs I've put together. I really think it's important for you as an investor to consider. Now, me personally, all right, so I get asked, where are my top markets to invest in? So, based on my experience and research and relationships, the next slide are my top four markets that I would probably direct investors at least to consider. All right, and these are the four. You've got Cleveland, Ohio. All right. And that's one of the main markets I personally invest in. Number two, Raleigh, Durham, which is in North Carolina. Three, Dallas, Texas. And four, Columbus, Ohio. So interesting, you have two cities in the state of Ohio. But overall, these four markets really check mark a lot of the things I previously mentioned. They're landlord friendly. All right. A lot of them have affordability. So you have the affordability factor. Um, you've got job growth in many of these markets. You've got sizable employers. And you've got development and things happening, right? I hosted an event last year in Dallas, and just to see the growth, talking to some of the local agents there, they're talking how Dallas, the population has exploded over the last 10 years, and soon it's going to be surpassing Chicago to be number, I think, three or four largest market in the nation. So something as an investor you want to look into. All right. But yeah, Cleveland affordability. I mean, I'm going to show you some examples soon where I'm acquiring properties for less than $50,000, and their rents are, $1,000 a month. So you're kind of like hitting 2% rule. So again, just something I like to share because people are asking, Thomas, where should I invest in? These are my personal top four, and it could change. This is where I'm kind of like focused on right now. But would I look at an opportunity somewhere else? Absolutely. I'm not closing my eyes, but these markets are my top four. And pulling up a couple other resources, and you can see how for instance, Zillow top housing markets from last year. You could see Columbus is up there, Charlotte, Cleveland. So a lot of my top picks are also top picks of other companies. Realtor.com, another one. You can see how they're all hovering that northeast corridor. Again, why do you think? I think affordability is the main factor. Interest rates have skyrocketed over the last number of years, and that just put a real damper on what people can afford. It's getting difficult more and more. So places like the Northeast, which were really overlooked for years, right? Even during COVID, I mean, for years and years, the prices of homes in these markets were very flat. And that there was no appreciation. We joke around. It's like, you'd invest in those markets only for cash flow. Forget about appreciation. But that's not the case anymore. Many of these markets are seeing 5 to 7% annualized appreciation. So over 5, 6, 7 years, you know, the prices are going up substantially, which is huge. These are some of the people who attended our past boot camps, and there's some examples of deals that they acquired. Here's one: a duplex for $100,000 that rents for $1,800 a month. Another fourplex they acquired for $225,000. Again, if you can find these price points in Canada, I'd be very surprised. Here is an eightplex. This was actually a property I acquired a few years ago. I purchased an eightplex for $450,000, did some improvements, and now it got last year was appraised only 2 years later for $700,000. This is a 24 unit apartment. Again, Ohio, right? I mentioned that earlier. 24 unit apartment, and these are the numbers. Acquired for 1.35. Yes, we acquired this entire building for 1.35, which is like the price of a home, not even a big home in the GTA. And these are all three-bedroom units. All right. So going in rents were around 700, and now on turnovers, we're getting up to $1,500, Section 8 on top of it, which I won't get into too much tonight. But 18 months after owning the building, got appraised for 2.3. Again, that's the power of investing in a landlord-friendly market where you have that control. All right. Yeah. Where else can you acquire property for like 1.35 that's got the ability or the potential of generating $30,000 a month? And this is the reality. We only own this for a couple of years, but if we hold long enough, we turn over more units, we can definitely reach $30,000. Another building. This is a 38 unit building we acquired for 1.9 million. So 50K per door. And our projections right now, we're pushing, unit turnovers. Our goal is to get $40,000 a month in this one building. A small little deal I did earlier this year. I bought this 11 unit building for $695,000. A little higher, 63K per door, but this property, everything was done. From windows to roof to the HVAC to the plumbing, electrical, it was stripped to the bone. And every unit's beautiful, completely renovated. And we've got all 11 units have the Section 8 veterans. So every unit's got a veteran in there. So we get a government subsidized rent, so guaranteed rent directly from the government. And we acquired this property that's generating gross revenue of over $8,000. But the goal over the next few years is to bump up the rents, and our goal is to get around $10,500 a month. So it's not crazy talk. I mean, we're already getting about 970,000, 75,000, 975 for one of the units. Now the other units, we got some paying lower. We're just going to focus on bumping up the rent. So again, we've already established our own comp in the same building. All right. But this is a reality. This was something available on the MLS. It wasn't even picked up super strategic, like off market, door knocked or anything. This was something that we basically looked at. We focused, we negotiated, put on a contract, did a due diligence, and closed on it. All right. Let's continue. So yeah, I guess hopefully you've been taking notes and hopefully you found some value. But really, the roadmap for you as a Canadian is number one, start wherever you're at. You could be a brand new investor, never bought anything, or you can be a really experienced investor, but start. Really commit to exploring the US market. All right. Learn. So getting into rooms like the one tonight, getting the right education, the right support from people like myself, Alfonso, people who are doing it already. You want to really learn, right? And finally, action. Nothing's going to happen on its own. And too often people get, too caught up in analysis paralysis, too caught up in just talking to people, reading books, but nothing ever happens. All right. So you got to put the action. But ultimately, hopefully, through just this presentation and as you're kind of looking at some of the stuff I'm sharing, my whole, wish for you is not to let the border limit your wealth and your potentiality. All right. And ultimately, as I shared, it's not complicated, but you need to know. but it does require action. And that's our three-step philosophy within the Wealth Genius community. You've got the mindset, wherever you're at. You can't do it. I can't do this. Yes, you can. So we help you with that. Knowledge, learning, but finally the action. Nothing's going to happen unless you take the action. All right, folks? And again, within here in the Wealth Genius community, we've got the top level training. We got that mentorship to really help you reach your goals. I want to share a couple other slides to continue adding value to, again, the people in our community who attended the 3-day boot camp and really, start spending time with us. I do these boots on the ground event. I'm taking members and people to various cities across the U.S. We basically set up various properties to walk. So really, as a long distance investor, you're like, well, I don't know anything about Cleveland, Ohio. Well, I don't know anything about Dallas. Well, that's why I do these events. I bring Canadians and we spend 3, 4 days scouring properties, learning about the markets, bringing local experts to educate us, right? And I've been doing this now for almost 4 years of various boots on the ground. We've done Tampa, Phoenix, Dallas, Cleveland, Vegas. So we see, from new build to single family to multifamily to flips, co-living, and so forth, right? So again, this is just a wealth of experience that we have and just the value that I'm looking to bring people. Tiffany came to one, and she just left us a nice little positive review that, she gained so much knowledge. Actually, her and her business partner, Trip, um, they've 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 done many deals now since coming to that boots in the ground. I think they're on 4 or 5 deals within a year's time. So it's really exciting to see that people come and they're not just coming and just listening, but they're actually taking the action. All right. So in summary, wealth really doesn't care about your postal code. I mean, crossing the line, meaning the border, can really unlock your bottom line. So the biggest risk ultimately, I share with Canadians is potentially staying local. If you're based in, let's say, Oakville, Ontario, I mean, that could be a huge risk. So my goal in this presentation is really expand your mindset, help you understand, get you outside of your comfort zone, right? And that the best deals may not necessarily be next door to you. So really think internationally, but really profit locally. All right, guys. So hopefully you found some value in that. Let me stop sharing my screen. And, I'm going to pass it over to Alfonso. But, it's good to see we still got a good group of people in here. While we wait for Alfonso to come on, if there's anyone that's got a particular question, you can leave it in the chat. But again, I showed you that one slide that we have a 3-day event coming up in November. So again, tonight's session, hour and a half or so, you kind of get the gist. You got, a little bit of information, understanding, but now imagine doing that over 3 entire days. And that's going to be, a huge, event and a lot of information and value that we bring to that. Okay, so with that, I believe I have to make Alfonso host. So give me 1 second, guys. Okay, Alfonso, you're on mute.
Woo! I couldn't move. I couldn't move. Uh, I locked down the plates. I locked down the
That's
place.
it.
So
Lockdown.
no one can unshare or open up their camera. So I'm just gonna get going, Thomas, and then
Yeah, go for
we'll
it.
answer questions at the end
Sounds good.
because we want to make sure that we don't hold anybody up. And so here we go. Slideshow. Boom. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Thomas. I'm excited because I want to make sure that the confusion is out. No more confusion. Taxes on, taxes off. People tend to be focused on the wrong things, and I'm excited about what's happening because currently, um, We are currently living through the best of times. If you want to invest anywhere in Canada or the US, I think you're going to be in great shape. Right now, there's more opportunity than we've ever seen. And these next 3 months are going to bring about the most opportunity that we're going to see in hindsight. We shoulda, coulda, woulda. The Great Canadian Takeover, how Canadians are building wealth through U.S. real estate, even without U.S. credit or citizenship. The insider secrets that let everyday Canadians buy, own, and profit from U.S. properties legally and profitably. And so we want to talk about that. And Thomas talked a little bit about how we can eliminate the border. And the idea is, not to have this imaginary line that was drawn a long time ago hold you back from, going across the border and investing as a Canadian. Now, I'm still going to tell you there's going to be lots of opportunities all across Canada. So we're saying invest in Canada and the US, because what's happened is that we're opening up a market that's, 10 times the size. And so at the end of all of this, we'll be inviting you to our US investing for Canadians boot camp. It's a 3-day boot camp, November 25th to 27th. Mark the date. It'll be a virtual event, so you can watch it. You can participate from the comfort of your own home. Thomas, they don't even have to wear pants, right? We
No.
prefer you wear pants, but you can be in the comfort of your own home. So a little bit about me. I didn't get the opportunity to introduce myself at the very beginning. I've been doing this for a while, almost 30 years. I've been a full-time investor for 26 years and speaker, mentor, coach for about 18 years. So I started my business back in 1995. I've owned businesses on both sides of the border, Canada and the US. I've built multi-million dollar businesses over my 30 years. I've been a full-time investor for now 26 years. I built a multi-million dollar portfolio across Canada and the US. And I'm known as the godfather of real estate because I've been doing this for a very long time. Um, also, um, I've been a trainer, a speaker, a coach for now going on 18 years, and I've had the opportunity of training thousands of people on investing all across Canada and the US. And I've created thousands of millionaires, and that, my friend, I'm proud of. Now, if you want to stay connected, here's the QR code. Go right to my Instagram, and the reason I share that with you is because there's a lot of fake accounts, and I'd hate for you guys to follow my fake account. Usually, when people meet me online or whatever, they'll go and find me, and there's all these fake accounts. So this is my account. If you send me a DM, tell me, Alfonso, I met you at the Great Canadian Takeover. I will DM you back, and I will follow you. So follow me, and I will follow you, and we'll connect. Take a screenshot, take a picture of this, and let's connect. Let's figure out how to connect. So, Thomas and I have been training students to invest in the US since 2021. Uh, I met Thomas a while back. He was my student, and through growing his portfolio and becoming good friends, we went beyond the mentor-mentee relationship, and we became partners. We're growing the U.S. market together, and it's just it's been a lot of fun, and all the people that have invested with us have been, it's been an incredible ride ever since 2021. We love introducing Canadians specifically into the U.S. market, and primarily I'm known as a multifamily guy. But what I love about Thomas is, he's got a U.S. citizenship. He lives in the U.S., but he's also Canadian, so he understands how we think as a Canadian, and so I think there's a massive differentiator there between what we do and what other programs have or produce. And so we like to say that we produce results for people because we know exactly what Canadians are going through, the challenges, things that they have to overcome, and we want to help them through those challenges. Um, this is one of the properties, one of our students purchased just. Oh, there's still people coming in the room. Just on one of our boots on the ground, $100,000 for a duplex. I mean, you can't go wrong with that.
Hmm.
And so, U.S. investing, in my opinion, is a game changer and can really change the trajectory of your financial future. This is your opportunity to enter a market. A lot of people feel that they're kind of priced out of the Canadian market. I still feel there's a lot of opportunity in Canada, but I also want to make sure that people are also looking into the US. So the truth is there's a wave coming, and the key to success is in positioning yourself in front of a wave, and that wave is coming. Your biggest expense isn't your rent or taxes, it's lost opportunities. It's not taking action when you know you should have taken action, and there's an opportunity cost in not taking action. Hold on, we got this here. Okay, how do we support our mentor in newbies? Okay, so we're gonna hold off on the. So I'm gonna just make sure that we don't get distracted here, and we'll come back and answer all everybody's questions in just a moment.
Yeah.
Um, but this is what we've been doing since 2021. So we're excited about that. We've created infrastructure all across the US. We have already gone in advance, and we have um, you know connected with all of the service providers and the people that can help you invest into the US as a Canadian, specifically as a Canadian. Because see, the issue is if you go to the US, a lot of these folks are not going to be able to help you. They don't understand, the double taxation issue. They don't understand cross-border structures. And so you really need people to help you. And those are the things that we're going to be focused on at the boot camp. This is Manny. Manny came to that boot camp back in 2022. Now he owns a portfolio of over 100 doors in the US. And we're just so happy for Manny. He's just incredible. And so um, why the US? Okay, why the US? Well, it's like investing in many Canadian markets 10 years ago. You still would have found cash flow, still a single family home still, met the 1% rule. Now, with inflation, just things don't work. This is why for me, when I talk to people in Canada, it's just you better get into multifamily because you got to go up in numbers for things to work. I'm still a big believer in multifamily, and I'm going to go and if I'm going to buy in the US, it's going to be multifamily. But what we're realizing is you're seeing better cash flow with smaller properties, lower entry point, so you can get into a market where the average cost of a house is 100,000, 120,000, or a duplex for 100,000 or 120,000. And so what happens is you get to grow with that particular market, and you get to tap into bigger populations with more tenants because the just the simple size of the US is 10 times the size of Canada. And for example, I think Thomas had touched on this, that the US population is 10 times the size of Canada. All of California is bigger than all of Canada. The
Hmm.
GDP of of many states are larger than the GDP of all of Canada. And so sometimes people ask this question, I don't know where to invest. Well, the best deals aren't where you think. Most people's strategy in investing in the US is investing into markets where they want a vacation to. That is not the best strategy. In fact, we're going to show you markets, and we're going to spend a lot of the boot camp talking about specific markets that actually are going to produce the highest return on investment on your money. And so Thomas talked about these four markets, um, you know, North Carolina, Texas, and Ohio. Well, guess what? We're gonna go deep on these markets during the boot camp, and we're gonna show you exactly how to buy, when to buy, and what to do. What are the assets? What neighborhoods to stay away from, because that's also another issue. This is too complex, people say. Well, guess what? You know what's more complex? Spending time, spinning your wheels, trying to do this on your own. We have a three, all you got to do is take a 3 day session with us, and we'll show you how to do this. You don't want to be doing it alone and not following a proven step-by-step plan that we've created for you that we're going to present to you at the boot camp. That can be extremely complex. Now, building your US team, we're going to show you how to do that. We're going to show you how to build a team, systems, and then where to how to structure your deals. These are things that you're going to want to do, and we're going to teach you at the boot camp. So what's next, Thomas? What's next? You know what's next? The boot camp.
Yeah.
The boot camp. US Investing for Canadians, a 3 day virtual boot camp. We're not only going to talk about US, but we're going to show you how to buy multifamily, land development. We're going to show you how to raise capital. And of course, US investing. It's a 3 day intensive boot camp, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on November 25th, 26th, 27th. It's a live virtual step-by-step intensive event where we show you exactly how to set up your US investing structure, analyze and pick your market. So this is going to be very important, how to pick your market. Find and fund your deals, especially with US lenders, because this is very specific. You're going over as a foreign national, so we're going to show you that. And how to protect yourself legally and financially. So you don't end up paying more taxes than you have to. And so this is a boot camp that we have just for you. We're going to go through joint ventures in the US, how to get Canadians to invest in the US, multifamily in the US, the 1031 exchange. I think from a tax and corporate perspective, you need to understand what is a 1031 exchange and why is it so lucrative for the people that are investing in the US. US investing as a Canadian, raising capital for your deal in the US, the birth strategy in the US, build your US team, and cross-border taxes and modern co-living, which Thomas introduced to you. We're going to go through underwriting in the US. We're going to go through how to find your deals, how to fund your deals, how to build brand new apartment buildings in the US. This is a 3 day live Zoom training. So we're going to do this on Zoom. It's going to be a virtual training. You're going to get our US investing blueprint. You're going to get the real market deep dives. You're going to get a 20-step walkthrough checklist. We'll have professional investors on site that are going to help you do a portfolio analysis. We're going to do a strategy session. So you're going to leave there with a 90-day action plan plus a workbook. This entire virtual event is roughly about $1,900, and you're not scaring anybody. For $1,900 to learn how to invest and not make mistakes and not spend all this money on trying to create an infrastructure and tax structures and all that. I mean, you could save yourself thousands and thousands and make thousands and thousands. But what we're going to do is right now we do have an early bird price right now, 487. So instead of 1900, it's 487, and we have something even special. Oh, before we get into that, this is Pat and Bobby. They came to that boot camp, and now they invest all across North America, and they're full-time investors. This is Tony and Luis, government workers, came to that same event, that same boot camp. Now they're full-time investors all across North America. And so that early bird price, if you guys want to write it down, if you want to write it down, it's Quadra, Cuadra. Quadra. Early bird price is 487 for this boot camp. And what we've done is, Thomas, we're doing it for 87 bucks, buddy.
Practically free. It's 3 days, guys.
87 bucks less than dinner for two. In fact, guess what? Bring two people. Two people for $87.
Nice.
It's unreal. It's unreal. Now, we've already have a QR code. We're going to show you in just a moment. The QR code includes it already has the discount in it, but for whatever reason, if you go to Eventbrite, you'll have to use the promo code. So write the promo code, which is Quadra. It will show you $87 plus taxes. So um, it's about 91 or whatever. So you get a 3-day intensive training. Here's your QR code, 20-step walkthrough checklist, all the other bonuses that I showed you earlier, plus a personal strategy session and a portfolio analysis. You're going to get 2 workbooks, plus you can bring a guest, all for 87 bucks. Actually, Thomas, can you check, make sure it's the right QR code, just
Sure.
in case, just in case, just in case, just in case. It's unreal. 87 bucks. Me and you together, 3 days intensive. Here's the QR code. Use this QR code. Make sure that you get your tickets right away. Right away. So this offer does expire at midnight. Not only that, we want it to be an intimate setting because people have a lot of questions. We really don't want more than 30 people. And so after 30 people, it will be completely sold out. And so I want to make sure that you guys get your tickets and either it sells out or it expires. Either way, get your tickets right away. Don't even wait. Now, we talked about these bonuses. We have 3 bonuses. If you get your tickets within the next couple of hours, you're going to get our top 5 U.S. markets for Canadians in 2025. So this is a document all about the markets. You're also going to get a deal analyzer tool and a legal entity setup guide. So you'll get those 3 bonuses. If you take action at any time within the next hour, we will give you the bonuses. 3-day intensive training, 20-step walkthrough checklist, personal strategy session, portfolio analysis, workbook, plus you can bring a guest. 87 bucks, 87 bucks. You can't, I mean, take a screenshot, do whatever you got to do. Leave it there. I'm gonna I'm gonna open up the chat now. I'm gonna open up the chat so I know you guys can have questions. So we can field some of these questions, okay, Thomas?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
So looking at the chat, how do you qualify for mortgage in US Canadians? Um, there's a number of options. So Zoom user, okay, I'm not sure who exactly asked that question. So there are lenders who have access to foreign investor products that are already geared towards Canadians. There's many different options. So you've got the Canadian side, you've got the US side, or some of the strategies we talk about is getting seller financing. So there's a number of ways Canadians can secure properties in the US when it comes down to the financing component. You don't have to acquire properties all cash. So there are lenders who have products, and obviously, the more experience you have as you start building a portfolio, more and more doors will open. Especially when it goes to the multifamily, because you're talking commercial loans, those ones are definitely, going to be based on the experience level, the property itself. So there's a number of factors to consider. But in terms of like 1 to 4 units, more residential type of mortgages, there are DSCR. There's a number of different, products available for Canadians. Um, is it Kareen? Looks like you have a few questions. What are the risk factors when investing in multifamily? So that's a particular question that's not necessarily, cross-border, but I can definitely help you in answering it. There's risk, number one, in real estate. So let's start at the top. There's going to be risk whenever you invest in anything. Obviously, when you go multifamily, that's the strategy me and Alfonso really focused on. And there's a number of reasons because we feel like it's actually reducing your risk. Yes, most likely the price point will be higher. That's not always the case, as I gave you those examples in Ohio compared to a home in Toronto. However, some of the risks with multifamily, if it's in a very rough area, the tenant pool, you may have, rough tenants. But at the same time, depending on the strategy, if you're going for value add, The amount of cost to improve the property. That's something you need to consider. Do you have enough capital available or accessible to be able to renovate and keep the property in good condition? Cost for managing multiple properties. So I'm investing out of state, so I always have local property managers managing my properties. So you have a good you need a good job. You need to do a good job managing your managers, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it's asset manager.
Yeah.
We'll take a pause on the questions and we'll come
Yep.
back with more questions because on top of this being $87 for two people, we have a guarantee, 100% money back guarantee. Woo! Thomas,
Let's do it.
100%. If
Well, we know
day
what we're
one,
delivering. We know what we're delivering. I mean, we're giving you guys a lot of value.
if on day one you don't believe it's worth 10 times the investment, we will refund you, no questions asked. And I think we stand by our products. And we've done this many times in the past. And, you know, uh, we stand by what we teach in what the content of that boot camp. So you're going to get the 100% money back guarantee if on day one you don't find the value. Um, we're gonna be there, me and Thomas, all 3 days. $87. This is James. James actually, he was blown away by coming to the book. Oh, look, this I don't know how to get rid of. Sometimes people don't know that they're doing this. But James, he had come to the boot camp. Um, he had come to the boot camp and he loved it. He actually bought a 33 unit apartment building for roughly about $3 million. It was just reappraised at 8.4 million. And now he's working, I'm not sure, it's about 230 unit. I think I think it's in Florida. I'm not sure where exactly. Do you know where it is, Thomas?
Yeah, it's in Florida. The
Yeah.
self-storage.
Yeah. So he's really taken off and so that's been um transformational, and it was because of what he's learned in some of these events. So the next step is the boot camp. I want to make sure that everybody can get their tickets, and I'm going to go put that QR code back up there. But the secret to life is in raising your standards. Demand more of yourself than anybody else. And so we'll take a few more questions. And I have this stuff here, but I'm just going to leave this up here. We'll just finish it up with one more question. We'll take one or two more questions, and then we'll be done for the day.
Um, let's see. How do you support? Where in Canada should we start first, and why? Well, again, we're going to encourage you to come and attend the 3-day boot camp. So if you've sat in this entire session tonight, about how long? An hour and a half. You got an idea of what the 3 days will be. It'll be like this, but even more intense and even more information and more content and giving you more of what you need from the financing, the structure. I think the top three things for Canadians I'm always talking to. Number one is the taxation. Number two is the corporate structure, how to set up myself, corporate different entities between Canada and US need to set up. And then financing. Those are the top three things that always come up. So we'll touch upon those things during the 3-day boot camp. You'll really want to be there. And it's really designed that, you come there because I'm looking at, is it Lisa? Looks like she has a question there on how the 3-day boot camp. It's going to be more of this. I mean, after 3 days, you will have, probably a booklet of notes and information. We will also have breakout sessions, so you get a chance to connect and talk and portfolio analysis that Alfonso mentioned. Even if you don't have a portfolio, helping you understand what your goals are and help you to put, a game plan in place. So I'm signed up for the October bootcamp. Oh, okay. So we got Kareem. Congratulations. You signed up. Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations. We
Congratulations.
actually
Looking
saw a
forward to
few
see you
people
there.
come in. Congratulations to everybody that bought tickets. It's really, really exciting, and we're looking forward to connecting with you guys, and looking forward to seeing you at the boot camp, November 25th,
Yep.
26th, 27th, and That's it. That's exciting, you know. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank
Uh,
you guys.
looking forward to seeing everybody. Congratulations to everybody that bought tickets. Woo! And yeah, I'm gonna